Liebe Gäste, ich fühle mich geehrt und gleichzeitig stolz darauf, von Ihnen eingeladen worden zu sein und heute hier zu Ihnen zu sprechen. Vor 5 Jahren wäre der Gedanke, dass ich auf einer so großen Veranstaltung über Fragen der Gleichberechtigung des Unternehmensführung sprechen würde, nicht sehr realistisch gewesen. Ich lebte als männlicher CEO und kümmerte mich um meine eigenen Interessen und um meine Karriere. Das bin ich vor 5 Jahren. Jetzt auf Englisch. I walked the seemingly perfect normative track in life, doing everything as you should do to check all the boxes. You know, dual university degrees, Diplom-Ingenieur, Elektrotechnik, Diplom-Betriebswirt. Sogar meine Diplomarbeit in Deutschland geschrieben. Ich habe elektronische Steuergeräte für Diesel-Einspritpumpen bei Bosch in Stuttgart entwickelt. And then continue my career, 6 years as a management consultant with McKinsey & Company, working with the hardcore financial institutions, then 25 years as a corporate career in the insurance sector. And then you find me 5 years ago, when I turned 50 years old, there you see me, CEO of a Swedish insurance company. I thought to myself, I probably fulfilled all normative requirements you could think of a CEO in finance, right? First of all, unfortunately, being a man. And then, you know, the right shade of gray in my suit, not too light, not too dark, the right amount of gray in my hair to project that wisdom and experience whenever I delivered my quarterly reports with rock solid confidence, because there were no shortage of There was no shortage of self-confidence when I presented anything. After all, I was a seasoned CEO, right? Wife, 3 children, stately home, nice company car, respected in my community. I was even master of ceremonies at the local Freemason lodge. Didn't I have the complete package, right? Yes. But there was something I didn't have. Happiness. I wasn't a happy person. I thought happiness was, you know, gathering as much material as you could, reaching that CEO position. I still wasn't happy. And then I realized happiness, where do you find it? You need to find it inside yourself. And I realized that was something inside myself that I'd kept hidden for my entire life, because I was so scared what would happen if I opened that Pandora's box that was inside of me, because I suspected it was something about femininity. But I was also scared to open it. Why was I scared? Well, because we in our society do not always treat people kind if they break norms. We are very quick to put expectations on how other people should behave, how they should live their lives. And I thought that if I would open that box, maybe I couldn't close it again. Maybe I would lose my family, my friends and relatives, and most of all, my socioeconomic position in business, because that is also where my ego was attached. Because surely nobody would respect a business leader, certainly not the CEO who came out as a trans person. You know, that simply wouldn't work, would it? Yet I thought I've only one chance in life to live my life as who I am. And then I made the mental experiment. What would happen if some of my kids came to me and said, "Dad, I think I'm homosexual"? Would I enter discussion with my child to say, "You know, my child, there are pros and cons of coming out as who you are, society might treat you badly"? Or would I embrace my child? Of course I would embrace my child. Then what kind of role model would I be as a father if I didn't live my life authentically? Then I knew I just had to do it. So I set a year ahead in time, I should come out as who I am, as Caroline. That year of transition preparation was the most arduous year in my life. That mental journey is so mentally burdensome that there are some of us who don't make it to the end. And some of those are tragically no longer with us for that reason. But thanks to the love and support of my family, friends, and ultimately my employer, the big day came, and I could finally live as who I am. The picture to the left is someone who seemingly had it all, should be a very happy person, but he was living behind a facade. He wasn't living his life authentically. And he thought that facade was a requirement for him to be respected in the business community. The picture right is someone who still has it all. Family, wife, position in business society, and she's living her life authentically, and it's been a true success. I'm a very happy person. Thank you. Thank you. And I thought that the journey would end here, you know, me living happily ever after, and you can think about what made it work, etc. But I stumbled into something I was absolutely not prepared to stumble into: gender norms in business. Because if you invited me 5 years ago as Carl, which was my name back then, to talk about the situation for women in business and gender equality, I would have done so with the same rock-solid confidence I would deliver my quarterly reports. After all, I was a CEO to talk about anything, right? It took me only a few months to live as a woman to realize how wrong I had been, how little I had understood. It was not because I was treated differently myself. After all, I still had the privilege of having the CEO business card. It was because all the women around me included me as one of them in the female community. And they told me stories I hadn't heard before, like how difficult it could be to actually make your voice heard, how tough the jargon could be, all those jokes that were laughed at that were in fact not at all that funny. How difficult it was to be able to influence a decision in a meeting, which seemingly already had been made by a few men outside the room. And I even got trustworthy testimony of sexual harassment committed by men close to me at a previous employer that had gone unreported due to lack of faith in the system. And if someone had asked me back then if I would have vouched for my male colleagues, I would have done so with rock-solid confidence because I truly trusted them. But the testimony was very clear, and it was shared in the female community as warnings. And I asked the women, why didn't you tell me all of this beforehand? I mean, we had so many one-on-one meetings. I asked you all the right questions in the HR rulebook. They were like, don't you see, you lived as a man back then. You wouldn't have understood. If I would have come to you with all these small things, you would just see me as a weak and complaining person, and you wouldn't see the potential in me. And first of all, oh, of course not. I'm a very open person. But then I realized, maybe probably not, because I've grown up as a boy, learned how to fight in the schoolyard, spending time in the military, being taught never to show weakness, 6 years with the McKinsey company, working 80 hours a week, being taught never to complain about high workload. I had a rather tough attitude towards management. You know, management is tough. Maybe if you're not tough enough, maybe you don't belong in management. Then I realized what a privileged position I had. In the part of society where I work, being privileged is being a white heterosexual male. As soon as you differ on any of those categories, you start to lose privileges. And it is very hard to see privileges if you yourself belong to the privileged norm, because it's very simple to assume that it's as easy for everyone else. But when I stepped to the other side and listened to the stories from other women, truly listened, I understood how privileged I've been. My greatest privilege could be that I could just be myself every day. Never mind how I looked, if I shaved or not, if my shirt was wrinkled or not, how I behaved. My privilege was I could be myself, and I could assume to be respected for whom I was. Then I understood that there were other privileges also, even greater, all my networks that I could rely upon. You know, those buddies from the military cadet school, those buddies, we were management consultants together in the finance industry, only guys. And then all those executive team activities that we did when we were only men in the executive teams, you know, hunting expeditions, hunting for wild boar. And then where I spent most of my free time at the Freemason Lodge in Stockholm as master of ceremonies. I never reflected upon how I spent my time. I thought, this is just how society works, right? But then I realized what a white male heterosexual bubble I've been living in. And it's also those networks where we supported one another. We traded favors with one another. We strengthened one another because we trusted one another. We had a common history. Then I asked women around me of tenure, do you also have similar networks? I've not yet come across senior women with the same strength of networks I had as a man. Then I realized what a privileged position I've been in. I've been part of a privileged structure called white heterosexual men that have worked in my favor. And that structure is sadly enough self-reinforcing. Why? Because if I had a senior appointment to make, I would know that I need to recruit someone I trust, because otherwise, I mean, if it goes wrong, it would reflect badly on me. So who would I recruit? Well, someone I trust, someone from my networks. Then I realized that there's so much more to it, this thing about diversity and inclusion. If someone had asked me about diversity and inclusion 5 years ago as a man, I would say I could deliver on it. When that thing came along, I was like, give me the metrics, I would deliver on them. What were the metrics on diversity and inclusion? Well, gender composition in the executive team, right? Yes, I could deliver on that. I had 5 men and 5 women in my executive team. Yes, the women were head of HR, legal, compliance, risk management, and the guys were the business line heads. After all, that was a business, you know. But I could deliver on the metrics. I was so self-confident about that picture. I showed it in my annual report in my social media. And when that thing about inclusion came along, that was a bit vague, and I thought I could probably wing it if being asked on stage. You know, I could always bullshit one. After all, I was a seasoned CEO, right? Now I know that's where the true value is. Yes, diversity has a great value in itself, that we should employ a selection of people representative of the society where we operate, but it's inclusion where the true value is. Inclusion is a culture and a set of management practices where you allow everyone to be themselves, bring them whole self to work, and that you, as an employer, see the value of the differences between one another. Where you not see commonalities, but see the strategic advantage, the strategic asset of using the uniquenesses we have as human beings. It's a management culture where I needed to train myself, which I did, to actually remove my ego from the equation, not being dominant in meeting and forcing my opinion as a CEO, but rather see how could I manage a culture where I can actually let the diversity play and actually use that as an asset. Keep my mouth shut, ask very curious questions, seeking truly to understand the perspectives from others. And I had much better retention ratios of very sought-after competences. You know, in insurance and in finance, there are many women, you know, in risk management and compliance positions. So those are very sought-after assets. Those women said that we want to stay in your team, even if they had competing offers, because they want an inclusive culture. And that is a key asset if you want to be able to recruit the key talent of tomorrow. Because the key talent don't just shop around for famous brands, they shop around for an inclusive culture where they can be themselves. So inclusion is an act, not a thought. It's what you do that counts. We have still many problems today in our business society of unequal structures. We have many places structures, social structures, and how we behave that were once built by men and for men. And now we say we have diversity. Now everyone is welcome to populate those structures, women, people of color, others. But if we don't change the structures as such, it's like having a game of football and we try to convince ourselves that it's a fair game because it would have the same rule book and an impartial judge. But if one team always plays a home game, Heimspiel, and the other team always plays an away game, Auswärtsspiel, who will win in the end? Who will endure the longest? Seeking truly inclusion is a culture that requires the effort from everyone. Und zuletzt, seien Sie authentisch und leben Sie so, wie Sie sind. Wir wurden alle als einzigartige Individen geboren und müssen der Versuchung widerstehen, normative Verhaltensweisen nachzuahmen, nur um dazu zu gehören. Bleiben Sie sich selbst treu und erlauben Sie anderen, so zu sein, wie sie sind. Schließlich sind wir alle Menschen und wir sind alle gleich viel wert. Danke.